All right, I think we got everybody in. I want to welcome everybody to our June edition of Talent Matters. We're really excited about this one. With all the attention around AI and how that is impacting the workplace, we're missing one important piece when we're implementing it, and that's the emotional intelligence. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm John Gave. This is my wife and business partner, Cindy Gave. She's our visionary. She makes things happen. I'm our integrator. I make them work. A couple of things to keep in mind for today. If you have any questions, bop them into the comments and we'll monitor them throughout. And there's a question and answer slide towards the end that we'll collect them all and talk about them. I'll get the resources back out to you, if not today, tomorrow, with the slides and the recording and the materials associated with it. And
keep in mind, this is going to last around 30 to 40 minutes. Now, that's going to be tough for us this time because as we're walking in to prepare for this morning, we said, there's so much cool stuff to talk about with this. We should have made it a series. It's not a series. So we're going to try to squish a lot of great talking points into one session. If we have to do a follow-up, we might bump something else later in the schedule for the year. So it's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how excited we are on some of the talking points on the different slides. We will take any of the comments that you put in here and try to answer them back as quickly as possible. You'll get the resources within a day or so. And I think that, when you can't wait to sign up for next month's webcast, make sure when you're responding, if there are questions or thoughts you want us to incorporate into that webcast, to jot them into the registration form, and we'll be happy to take a look at those.
So let's get into it. So I love this slide. I love this graphic. This is why we're really here today. And if you've been following the news, you know that whether it's OpenAI and ChatGPT, Claude, which just released, I forget what it's called, its latest release just came out, Grok is continuing to grow, Gemini, all these AI platforms are growing exponentially. The question is, how are our humans growing? More importantly, how are we growing emotionally? And the gap that is being created today and growing every day between what's happening with AI and what's happening with our emotional intelligence capabilities is growing, and we are concerned about that.
Yeah, I was just in a networking luncheon yesterday, and we were talking about the importance of AI. In fact, one of our clients is having an AI webcast going on today. But what we were talking about is how many people are craving more of the person-to-person, mano-a-mano communications. And I hear Gen Z is moving away from the smartphones and going back to flip phones to disconnect themselves from social media even more. Which kind of brought in one of the thoughts I had when I was driving into the office today. And I was thinking about Morabian's law. And Morabian realized, or rule, I think it's Morabian's rule, Morabian's law, that only 7% of our communication happens through the words we choose. The other stuff happens through the tone of voice, the pace of our voice, the volume of our voice, and that's 38%, and 55% are our mannerisms, our body language. That's eye contact, it's what we're doing with our hands and things like this. And even if you use Hey Jen, it's just not the same with AI as it is with humans interacting and the way we respond to each other more immediately, more genuinely. And so if you are really growing the AI piece and you're not paying attention to the EQ, especially when it comes to communications and interactions with others, there's a tremendous deficit. There's a 93% deficit in your communication.
Yeah, the key is to embrace AI but apply EQ, and we're going to show you some really cool things along the way to make that happen. Several things that we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about that paradox now that's happening between EQ and the workplace and why we need to focus on it today more than ever. What's happening if you don't have EQ and how does that cost you? We're going to touch on that somewhat. EQ can be developed, but most of the ways people train on EQ doesn't work. And we want to make sure that we talk about the best way to grow your EQ. The toughest question organizations need to ask themselves is, where do they start?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. We're going to show you the model that we use for development. Everybody's got a different opinion of what EQ is. Unfortunately, it's one of those few sciences that doesn't have a
singular
agreed
direction.
upon definition. So we're going to show you the one that we like, how you should structure your training to make sure that it lasts, making EQ a part of your whole organization, and that is really going to be important as AI is becoming a part of your whole organization. And one of the most important things to keep in mind is AI is going to be a huge leveler amongst the marketplace. Everybody has it. Everybody's going to be able to tap into those capabilities. What is going to be the differentiation is in the people and how it's used and the emotional intelligence behind it.
Yeah, and I think that leveling thing is something we all have to accept. So I'm going to date myself, but I remember when I was running a temporary service, and one of the things that we were looking at for some of the secretaries and the executive assistants that were coming in is whether or not they could work with a word processor and not just a typewriter. I told you I was dating myself. But now, people don't even know what a word processor is. The word processor is kind of built into our computers, and we couldn't imagine going back to a typewriter and caring about how fast somebody can type in a typing class. So the computer kind of leveled out. Like if you weren't capable of operating on your own with a computer, there was no job for you. Right. So it's really interesting. AI, for those people who are a little afraid of AI, if you don't get on board, it's here. It's not going anywhere. So, you had to give up the abacus long ago. So you had to go to calculators, and it's the same thing here.
So real quick, a little bit about us. We've been doing this since 1996. We've got presence in Metro Detroit and here in Charlotte. We focus on bringing people into the organization and getting them developed to be better leaders. We have a leadership academy which focuses on a lot of this, but the key is, as Jim Collins said, get the right people on the bus and in the right seats, and that's really the essence of what we're doing. And today we're talking about how EQ comes into play there.
Yeah, which is kind of, even though we have the emotional intelligence journey up in the top left quadrant of our little pizza pie here, it really hits on everything. If you are in leadership today and you don't know how to leverage all of your resources, which includes AI, which includes your talent, which includes being able to discern which members of your talent really can accelerate the AI capabilities and can leverage the EQ as well, as a leader, you're going to be really struggling. So it's more about what you can do with the resources you have and less about what you can do yourself.
So here's the dilemma we all face. We call it the AI paradox. As everyone is able to access the different AI tools, and again, it doesn't matter whether you're using Claude or ChatGPT or whatever one is embraced by the organization, eventually that's going to kind of level out the playing field. And the differentiator is going to come down to the people, and the emotional intelligence that the people demonstrate are going to be what is going to separate organizations. So the AI kind of can act as your IQ, but it cannot necessarily replace the EQ and how we communicate and work together.
Yeah, but and those who excel in the emotional intelligence, I believe, are going to be much better at prompting the AI. So, we hear really lazy HR people just take all the resumes they got for a job, dump it into AI and say, who are the top 5 people? Yeah. Who are the top 5 people I should talk to and who should I hire? But if your prompt is lazy and you're not talking about the type of person you want, and look for extracurricular activities that indicate this is more of an extrovert, or look for some projects that tell us this is somebody who is really good at carrying the ball all the way over the line. Whatever it is, that if you're not prompting AI for what to look for, it's garbage in, garbage out. And so I believe that those people who are more adept at the EQ are going to have the ability to really take the AI to a whole different level.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, I remember when AI first came out 2 or 3 years ago, and there was this new job called a prompt engineer.
Yeah, it came out, AI came out, or ChatGPT came out
like
in
in
November,
November.
and the prompt engineer position was
So
in
we had this
December
brand
on
new
posting.
job that we had never heard of before. Well, yeah, so now everybody's understanding prompting and how important that is. And some people use AI to create a prompt to feed to another AI. What we're learning about these prompts is the EQ required to craft an effective prompt is something that we haven't focused on before. And if you can understand what you're trying to get out of the AI and how it's going to affect others, that's important in creating your prompt.
And it really makes me think about, so we will use AI to kind of clean up some of our blogs after we've written them, because we don't want you to be able to tell, did Cindy write this one or did John write this one, or what about Sarah Donna? So we wanted to have the same voice. So through the years that we've been working with this, you and a consultant have programmed the chatbot to understand what our voice is, words we use, words we don't use, grammar faux pas that make me insane, tone of voice, what level of education are we speaking to, things like this. And it was funny because recently I had written one rapidly and you were on the fly someplace, so you just threw it into a random ChatGPT bot instead of our regular programmed one. And it came out and I'm like, I can't even spend the time correcting this. It sounded like a Valley Girl. It was horrible. And so you said, well, hold on, let me just put it into our regular one. And it came out great. I think I changed 2 or 3 words and we were ready to go. But it got smarter and smarter. But we had to get better at saying, no. Our clients don't like that type of assertion, or they don't like that syntax or the sentence fragments or whatever they were. And that doesn't flow for the type of client that we're targeting. And so it was really interesting. The more we started zeroing in on how we understand our audience and we could teach AI, and it was applying that EQ to the AI, it just got worlds better.
Yeah, if you think emotional intelligence at its basic is how well you understand yourself, so understanding your voice so that you can teach AI to reflect who you are. And then secondly, AI is about understanding others. So understanding how you can, what you get out of your AI and how it is going to impact others is important. So understanding yourself to feed, to make sure that AI represents your voice, and understanding others to make sure it's resonating with the type of people you want. So if you mess up, what's happening? And unlike other sciences, EQ's difficult to measure, and it's difficult to identify, but when it isn't there, you know it. You know it when you have conflict in the workplace. You know it when there's stress. You know it when you aren't achieving a lot of your success factors. You know when it's not there. It's a little bit harder to recognize when it is there, but as AI becomes more effective and the lack of EQ becomes more of a liability, having that low EQ is going to cost an organization's bottom line.
Yeah, it's like a good hockey defenseman. You never notice.
That's right.
You never notice them when they're doing their job well. It's when they screw up,
Yeah.
right? And so the same thing is true with AI and EQ. So we're going to say EQ is like a really great hockey defenseman.
Yeah. So don't disregard the importance of that skill. And one of the things that's important to understand on EQ, it is a skill, and it can be developed. And it can be atrophied.
Assuming the person wants to develop it.
It knows how to develop
Yes.
it. Remember, poor EQ is about blind spots. And if they're blind spots, we don't know how
Right.
to address them.
Right.
That makes developing EQ difficult. One of the things that we've learned over the years in training leaders is workshops may create some awareness and may create some temporary excitement, but workshops aren't going to create change.
Right.
And if you want to improve your EQ and you want to train it, it requires a sustained focus, more than just one lunch and learn. Remember, EQ is about uncovering your blind spots. And if they're blind spots, you aren't going to know that they exist without some sort of assistance or some sort of tool or some 360, but you got to develop, you got to recognize those blind spots before you can develop your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, we always tell people, with our emotional intelligence journey, we have a 3-month program and a 6-month program. And in 3 months, you get to the point where the first month is they're taking the surveys, they're getting some awareness, and then they're shocked at these blind spots, right? I didn't even realize that was a blind spot. So now they have to go through their day for another month going, there it is. There it was again. And then the 3rd month kind of lay out a plan for what they want to do to actually make some changes. And in some cases, they may not want to make the change, right? And then the next 3 months, if it's a 6 month, that's where they're saying, okay, this month I'm going to try X. And you try to work on those things. And then, you come back to your coach and what worked and what didn't work, what felt clunky, and the next month. But it has to be iterative so that you're trying to make some changes along the way and trying to implement them. But the first part of learning what the blind spots are, then accepting them, and then identifying what, if anything, you want to do about them is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I heard a great line the other day about a leader who wasn't quite as self-aware as you would think, taking pride in the fact that he works on his blind spots every day. And we're thinking, dude, if you're working on your blind spot, it's not a blind spot. it's something that needs improving.
Right.
It's hard to get that blind spot into your consciousness.
Yeah. I know you guys have always heard me talk about a couple of my brothers and my sister, but my one brother, brilliant, high IQ, 0 EQ. And, at one point I challenged him on it and he said, I don't care if other people like me. And I'm like, all right,
Sure.
well, there's that. Like, I don't know how you're not going to fix that. So just, put him in a closet where he can do no harm.
Sure. So oftentimes we get asked when an organization understands they need to become more committed to an EQ development, where to begin. And almost always an organization wants to start with this one problematic high performer who's a jerk. And we've all worked with these people in the past. Oftentimes they're like your brother. They're in some sort of
They're
technical
bringing some
field.
brilliance to the
Right.
workplace, and they're leaving a wake of dead bodies.
So an organization feels, well, we're going to start by giving EQ training to Michael, and by golly, if it can turn Michael around, then we're going to do it within the whole organization.
It's not going to turn Michael around.
And we all know that Michael needs more than just EQ training. He needs a pink slip. So if EQ is going to be successful within an organization, it needs to start at the top. It
sure.
needs to start with the CEO and the leadership team. All need to embark on whatever emotional intelligence training you're going to undertake. And remember, it's not a workshop.
No.
It may not even be a class.
Development. Let's not call it training, because training sounds like a workshop, like you're being lectured at. But it is development, right? What are we doing to develop?
So, not only starting at the top does it help to create the culture, but these are probably your most influential decision makers who have to have the most self-awareness and awareness of others for the organization to embrace AI. So why wouldn't you start with the team that's going to have the biggest impact within the organization?
The other thing that I've seen with a lot of leadership development is when you try to start at the bottom and work up, and the C-suite thinks we'll go last. We'll let everybody else do it first. It actually impacts middle management more negatively than anybody, because middle management wants to see themselves as part of the executives and distance themselves from the regular pack. And so they don't really want to be one of the first to engage in the leadership development. Now, if the middle management sees the top executives doing it first, they're like, well, when do I get to go? Because I'm at least as important as they are, right?
Well, plus they see what impact it's made.
Right.
Imagine the value to an organization if a leadership team's blind spots are uncovered and how that can move an organization forward. It's crucial that top leadership understand themselves and how to communicate with others in the world of AI to move the organization forward. So there are a ton of different EQ models out there. Goldman was the first one to bring it to market with his book, Emotional Intelligence. I think it was in the 80s, where he talked about the 5 different pieces of emotional intelligence: understanding yourself, self-regulation, understanding others, communicating with others, all wrapped around motivation. And most people have built, many social scientists have built assessments around that typology, but there are many other ways to look at emotional intelligence. We like this one approach that had been introduced to us, which breaks it into 6 different components, and then within each of those 6 different, 5 different components, and within each of those 5, 3 different subcategories.
Kind of one of the reasons we always go back and forth between the 5 and the 6, and why we get stuck on that is most all of the EQ models out there will talk about, as John said, self-awareness, self-regulation, awareness of others, and interaction with others. So those 4 are always the foundation of everybody's. But if you see here on the right, self-perception and self-expression are the same first 2, but interpersonal skills kind of combines awareness of others and interaction with others. So the 4 everybody else is here, but is wrapped into 3, and then there are 2 others that we consider most critical.
Yeah, particularly in the world of AI, having the ability to make effective decisions with AI helping guide you is enormous. And there's a lot that goes behind making better decisions and leveraging the information you're getting out of your AI around that.
And then the stress management, you know, I hear it at all size organizations, all levels of the organization, how people are really concerned about the stress that everybody's under. We're under unreasonable amounts of stress with the uncertainty in the economic and financial climate. We're dealing with stress with the uncertainty of where businesses are going. There's a lot of stress for young people coming out of school who are really stressing out about how to collaborate with the others, which goes back to the emotional intelligence. But they're terrified of like, well, why can't I just work from home instead on my computer? Well, because it's, you know, project management, which means you need to work with other people or whatever. So those 2 are big. The decision making is the part of this model that really made me jump in with both feet into the deep end. One of the things that you can see if you look at the bottom left over there is it includes problem solving, reality testing, and impulse control. So let's face it, AI sometimes hallucinates. And you research something in AI and you get some factoid that isn't a fact. So impulse control is, can you take a step back and look at it? Mm-hmm. Reality testing is, how does this fit with everything else you know? Does it seem something somebody said? Is it consistent with everything else you know about them? And then how does that lead to your problem solving? So as you are applying AI to more efficiencies in the workplace, to automating more things, whatever, if you're not doing some reality testing, John's been programming an app, and it sometimes gives you completely wrong information, right?
Sure.
So that decision-making piece, whether it's relative to interacting with other people or leveraging AI, is becoming critical, but it is all about exercising a lot of that self-awareness and self-regulation.
Yeah, and I would go back to stress management as being probably the most important aspect of learning and improving in AI. Stress in the workplace today is at an all-time high, and it's only going to increase until we can understand ourselves better, regulate ourselves better, understand how we're connecting with others, and being able to communicate with others. Otherwise, that stress is going to continue to build and build and build. And what we're seeing now is a lot of founders and a lot of business owners are selling their business because they don't want to deal with the stress that AI is creating. And that stress is being felt at the entry level, as you mentioned, the college graduates, all the way up to the owners. They're not sure what to do in today's business environment, and understanding how to manage that stress is huge.
Absolutely, and the stress below owner. So ownership is feeling a lot of it. In fact, I thought the other day I want to count up how many of our clients in the last 3 years have sold their business, or in the last 5 years. It's been pretty incredible. And then what's interesting though is at least ownership gets to choose. Do I want to sell? Do I want to bring on an expert? What do I want to do? These poor guys, at the entry level have everything happening to them. They don't get a say in it. So imagine the stress that they're in, not knowing what's the next wild thing that leadership is going to do.
Right. So we mentioned that you aren't going to be able to develop your emotional intelligence in a workshop, probably not even in a class. It's something that requires iteration, change over and over again. And the 70-20-10 model of learning applies in EQ more than anything else, where 70% of your learning and your development comes from practicing what you've learned in the real world. 20% of your growth comes from feedback and what you would get from a coach. And only 10%, 1/10 of your development is that actual formal learning, which you might think of as a workshop or going to class or watching the video. That is only 10% of the change. The rest is going to come through implementation and feedback. And if you're not committed to this type of an approach, it isn't going to work.
That's right. And I remember one of our sons had the world's greatest, you might have heard me talk about this woman, Tommy, who was the most amazing leader anybody could possibly have. He was the luckiest kid on earth to have gotten her as one of his first leaders. And he was growing by leaps and bounds, and the organization pegged him as somebody they wanted for their future. So they said, we'll pay for half of your MBA if you go for it. She encouraged him and supported him through that. He did. And a month after he gets promoted, a month after he graduates with his MBA, he is offered a promotion. So he jumps at the opportunity and didn't know much about the new boss. And we said, you had the world's greatest. So at some point, this person's going to come up a little short. And he said, oh, how bad could it be? Never asked that. And so apparently the rest of the organization knew that his new leader was not good and sent him for leadership training, including anger management, et cetera, and had them take some of the worst kind of 360 assessments you could. And a month or so after he got back from his training, he called Johnny in and said he wanted to talk to him. Johnny thought it was about a project. And he went in and the guy looked at him and said, I know you were the one who gave me these scores. I know you were the one who said this about me. You had to be. I'm giving you 3 weeks to find a new job or I'll take care of it for you. And, here Johnny had the world's greatest boss who wanted the feedback, who wanted to understand how she could improve and get even better. And this guy wanted nothing to do with applying any of the learnings. He was faced with it and just rejected it.
But you know what? You learn just as much from difficult situations as you do from good situations, and that was a part of growth. So not only to improve our EQ, do we need to go through some sort of education and understanding the different aspects of how emotional intelligence affects us and others, but for it to really stick, it needs to be a part of an organization. The organization as a culture needs to reward emotional intelligence improvement and emotional intelligence development, and that 70% of doing it needs to be embraced within an organization as they are improving and trying to separate themselves.
Yeah, it's got to be including all of that. You can't just show up for some training and think it's going to magically happen.
Yeah, and one of the things we saw one organization do as a part of their emotional intelligence experience share was to share all of their prompts that the team has given to AI. They went so far as to create a common database or shared document that everybody would put their prompts into as a way of showing how they have utilized some of their training and helping others see what prompts have worked and how to improve upon them. So the prompting, leveraging your EQ learning is a great way to make it stick within an organization.
And that's kind of how you've evolved the chatbot that we have that helps with our articles. So where we started was way better than just a general chatbot. And then little by little, we learned other things that you were able to go back in and teach it some more things. And that's shared with everybody. So anybody who's writing for us can access, they can write whatever they want, but make sure it all comes out in the same voice.
Yeah, I mean, just as leaders are encouraged to embrace AI and make it a part of their future, they need to embrace EQ and make it a part of an organization's future. EQ isn't just a one and done, just like
Right.
AI implementation isn't going to be a one and done.
Well, and then you think about the fact that AI will never be as bad as it is today, right? It is going to continue to improve
That's
itself day after day
Yeah.
after day.
Right.
And you'll see this every now and again. It's like, why did it start using sentence fragments all of a sudden? That was making me insane in sets of 3. And so we had to go in and fix that. That wasn't something it did a year ago. So it's trying to be better, but you have to be sharper and think about your audience and how you want to adapt to them, et cetera,
And you know, it could
and how
play-
your audience changes.
Right. And it's going to play out in leadership on how you give feedback, how you conduct one-on-ones, how you do performance management, how you set goals. All of that is relying on the EQ. Again, one of the mistakes organizations make is checking the box, is saying, yeah, we've done EQ, we sent our team to this very expensive workshop or class, and now we're going to be better. And that's not going to work. Within 6 months, that will have been ineffective. You really need to make it a part of your culture. It's got to be a part of all the systems that you're talking about. You need to have your own language around it. However you build it into your culture, that's where most organizations fail. They look at EQ training as being kind of like time management training that we all had in the 70s, and you went through it, you learned it, and you moved on. It's constantly changing.
That's right. And think about words we use today and words that we realize are not words we should use today, that were commonplace 20 years ago, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you could say something trumped something else, and you automatically thought of cards. One card trumping another card.
Yeah.
Now
political.
Trump is political.
Right.
And so those little words have new nuances, new meanings that we all have to be aware of. And, at some point we're going to have to train AI. Look, don't use that word.
Yeah, another area that I've seen it kind of be challenged recently is the use of emojis, and how picking the right emoji to match the emotional situation is now becoming more nuanced than it ever has. Maybe because there's more emojis, maybe because people are not as careful in using them. But who would have thought 10 years ago that putting an emoji in a text in the wrong way would create a miscommunication?
Oh, for sure. I had it happen last week. Somebody sent me something with a really sad face, and I'm like, wait, why is that bad? And they're like, oops, sorry, wrong one. And they sent me a new one with little hearts around it.
Right. So just as organizations are focusing on AI as being their differentiator, that advantage is going to evaporate. But what won't evaporate is the edge that organizations get on developing their people and developing their organization's emotional intelligence. That is going to be the competitive advantage organizations have very soon. As AI levels the playing field, it's going to come down to the people, and the people is going to come down to the emotional intelligence that they display. Because IQ is pretty much going to go away. I mean, your IQ is going to be largely replaced by AI.
Yeah, the IQ, a certain level of IQ is permission to play, because if you can't read the situation and realize it requires something different from an EQ perspective,
but it's all going to come down to that emotional aspect of
yeah,
of the
but
workplace.
we don't have tolerance of jerks anymore. So even if you are the brilliant guy, right, you're literally a genius, but you have no emotional intelligence, that's just not going to cut it. And emotional intelligence is important for everybody in the workplace. So oftentimes I think people think, oh, that person needs emotional intelligence. That person.
That's a perfect indication of a blind spot. If
Yes.
you think somebody else needs emotional intelligence, then that's a blind spot right there.
I was watching some meaningless TV show the other day, and there was a leader trying to have a conversation, and his attorney was sitting there, and he's like, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but, and so he says something, and she's making these faces and, getting aggravated with him. And then he says something, and he's like, what? I'm not supposed to say that either. And she's going on and making more faces and doing this. And while he was trying to be more aware of things he shouldn't say, her emotional intelligence was horrible because he couldn't even get anything out of his mouth before she was like slapping him on the wrist. Mm-hmm. So, we're thinking about this guy who's not using all the politically correct phrasing, and yet the way he was being corrected was just as much a poor representation of emotional intelligence.
Right. So
we got through it all.
All these slides will be available to you, but we talked a little bit about why it's so important nowadays, and that paradox that we're faced with. What happens if you don't have it in the costs that you're going to experience? Why most EQ training doesn't work? We talked about starting at the top. All right, if your CEO isn't the first one to do the EQ training, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. We talked about the different levels of EQ development, that it isn't just about understanding yourself, and it just isn't about others, it's about all of it. And it all comes into play, particularly around managing stress. We talked about what sort of training or development should look like. It isn't just about going to a workshop. It's practicing and getting feedback and doing it over and over and over again, and making sure that it's built into your culture and that it isn't just workshop based, that it is something that an organization focuses on in every meeting. We have some organizations that start off every meeting with some sort of emotional intelligence recognition. What a great way to make it stick. And then how we recognize that people are going to be the competitive advantage moving forward. AI is going to level out the playing field, and the differentiator is going to come down to the talent and the emotional intelligence that talent demonstrates.
And I have one last real life story to tell to explain that if you aren't taking your most emotionally intelligent person and having them lead the charge in your AI applications, you can do serious damage to your organization. So there is one of our best friends whose daughter is completed school. She's going on to med school, and she wants to be a physician assistant. And she has to go through all these interviews. And some brilliant person used AI to come up with an interview that would save the organization time and not bother them with the wrong candidates. So they set up a computer for this person, and she has to read a question and answer it as quickly as she can. In the corner is a clock winding down with how much time she has left to answer that question. Now, I will tell you that the type of person that you need in a PA is somebody who has some decent people skills. They're patient, they're warm, they're sincere, and those types of people are logical, stepwise thinkers. They're very calm. They have a calming presence, and they don't like to be put under pressure for pressure's sake. So when you have a clock ticking down on them and they're trying to think through the answer, this organization was screening out the very people they craved for their PA program. So that organization, that school, is going to be letting out graduates from their PA program who are going to have a heck of a time finding a job because they're not bringing in the right people to begin with, because the person programming that AI did not have any of the emotional intelligence.
Yep. It's a perfect example of why it's important. All right, a couple of questions that came in throughout. If you have any other ones, drop them in now. One came through earlier on, is EQ catching up with IQ in business? And I got to say for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the IQ piece is, like I said, permission to play. In fact, in the book, the EQ Edge, it talks about there's not really a correlation, but you have to have a certain level of IQ in order to read the situation, in order to apply the right emotional intelligence. But for sure, somebody who is extraordinary in their emotional intelligence can leverage all the rest of the talent around them. So even if they aren't the smartest person in the room, they can figure out who is and how to leverage that. And so that's why we say that that EQ is really going to be the differentiator moving forward.
We have another one here is can you or how can you measure EQ? And that's a tough one. Because remember we talked about blind spots, and EQ is about trying to uncover those blind spots. And if you are taking an EQ questionnaire, a self-reported EQ questionnaire, and you have blind spots, what is the likelihood that that questionnaire is going to reflect your true emotional intelligence?
Yeah, John and I have been struggling with this for decades. We love Goldman stuff. I think it was in the 80s, as you said. And there's some great, it's a wonderful science. There have been some wonderful books written about it. The assessments in general have been horrible. Up until we found the one through EQI or EQ 360, all the ones we had seen were all self-reported. I think my emotional expression is wonderful. Well, that's great, but if nobody else does, right? So we were thrilled when we found a good 360. There's a lot of lousy ones out there, but this one is really good. And it looks at how do you see yourself? How does your boss, your peers, your direct reports, even some friends and family, because you may present yourself very differently to the different groups. And getting that feedback allows you to decide whether or not you would like to expose that. And we did this with a couple of young engineers that you guys have heard me talk about before, who went in and their self-awareness was so low, they thought, they were probably told since they were little kids, you know what, you're not good with people, you should really go into engineering. But they didn't realize, because they kept hearing that head trash, they kept working on it. And when they got the feedback back, everybody around them scored them higher than where they scored themselves. And it gave them tremendous. Was there room for growth? Sure, there was still room for growth. But they realized that they were pretty good to begin with. And they weren't nearly as horrible with people as they had been told somewhere along the way. So if you don't have an opportunity to get some decent feedback on where you are so that you can decide where you want to go.
It's hard.
Yeah, but choosing the right tool, you don't want a tool that can be gamed.
And I would argue if a self-reported instrument shows somebody with a low score, that may be a better indication of their emotional intelligence than somebody who scores himself really high.
True.
Because if you understand yourself well enough to know where your weaknesses are and you are comfortable enough to report them, that says a lot more than somebody who thinks they're great, reports himself as great, and comes out with the same questionnaire scoring a 90% where somebody may have scored a 40%. And I'll bet you that person who scored a 40% has better emotional intelligence.
I would agree. Mm-hmm.
Scan the code gives you our job scorecard, by far our most downloadable resource. It's really kind of cool to see how that can change a relationship in the workplace, and then it'll allow you to access more emotional intelligence resources.
Yeah, and if you do like that model that we were showing you, check out the EQ Edge by Stein and Book, or Book and Stein. And I think you'll find that it's a fascinating book and study, and you'll get even more information about why it's such a powerful model.
So upcoming webcasts are July Talent Matters webcast is going to be on goals and the power of having aligned goals. And there's a lot more to than just saying everybody is going to be rowing in the same direction. We're going to talk about that. Up in August are going to be helping visionaries and hiring teams hire their right number two. It could be an integrator, COO. We're going to talk about how to get that hired properly. And then once they are on board in September, we're going to talk about how do you make that integrator
or that number two really
number two effective. So it's one thing to hire that number two. It's probably just as important to figure out how to make that number two effective within the organization. So that comes up in September. take the QR code and sign up on our website for either of those. And then October, November, and December, give us some ideas on what
We haven't planned them out yet.
and we'll get those included.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
Have a good month.